So, welcome to this episode of Menopause Conversations. Good, my words all tongue-tied there. My name's Amantha King. I'm a workplace menopause consultant and NLP coach, and I'm delighted to have my next amazing guest here on the podcast with me. And this is Dr. Nicky Keay. Hello, Nicky. How are you?
Fine, and thanks for inviting me on.
Oh, it's brilliant to have you because we're going to have a really interesting conversation around menopause movement and muscle health. And I couldn't think of anyone better to invite than Nicky to come and have this conversation with me. So, Nicky, you'll do a much better job of introducing yourself than I can. So, tell us a little bit about you, about your background and your role and what you're currently doing in terms of your work. Tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. Well, I'm a medical doctor, and I suppose my original motivation for studying medicine in the first place, because as a youngster, I was very keen on my sport, playing tennis, swimming. Ballet is my main thing, and I was just fascinated. I wanted to know what it was that if I go and do ballet class every day, I will gradually improve. What is it that's happening in my body that helps me achieve that? And conversely, what happens if actually things don't work out? What's going on? What's the difference between these situations? And my grandmother had been a dancer, by the way, but obviously she was a lot older, and I could see she was sort of struggling a bit with aches and pains of menopause. So I just wanted to understand what the heck was going on, and so that led me number one to medicine and number two to hormones, because hormones are the answer. um, but so that's why I studied medicine in the first place, specifically focusing on hormones and relating that to that information, that knowledge, my understanding of that to supporting people, uh, you know, uh, live the best life they can, achieve their personal full potential, whatever that might look like, whether that be a professional dancer or not. Whatever the level you want to achieve in your life, that's really important to understand what it is that's going to help you achieve that goal. So that's why I focused on hormones and yeah, done various clinical work, research specifically in this field, that relationship between exercise and hormones and health and performance. And that has led me over the years to start working a lot with dancers and athletes, looking at the effect of underfueling on hormones, adverse effects. So you can get it wrong, frankly, overdo the exercise even, or of course, conversely, underdo the exercise, as it were, type 2 diabetes, etc. And then also the other thing that I'm focusing on a lot is how hormones change over the lifespan, right? They're not static things, and especially for women,
Mm.
every woman will experience what I call the female hormone odyssey. So she'll start as a child, ovaries not working, not yet. Then they come to life, puberty, reproductive years, menstruating years, and then, of course, eventually the ovaries retire. We're talking perimenopause, menopause, and this causes big changes, big fluxes in hormones, which affect, of course, how we feel, how we are able to exercise our body composition. And so the relationship changes what's advisable to put into the system, as it were, in terms of nutrition and exercise, so that we get out what we want. You have to
Yeah.
respect your hormones is the key message.
Yeah, and I love that hormone odyssey. I might pinch that. That I really like that. That's a really great sort of descriptor, isn't it, of it? And obviously, I think what's really interesting, we can hear lots of people talk about exercise theoretically, but it's another thing to be someone who's exercised yourself and understands it. I mean, I literally just had a bit of a tantrum in your 50s. I had a little bit of a rant, Nicky, like just before I came on. I said to my husband, if I just see one more trainer telling me how I've got to lift weights and not those pink fluffy ones, and I just thought, oh, please don't keep on that and how you got to do this and you got to do that. It just feels like I'll be honest in this interview, I am not someone who enjoys that. I had a whole year subscription at the gym, Nicky, and I went twice.
Oh
I
God.
don't I don't I'm not motivated to go there. I don't really like being in classes with other people. I feel really self-conscious. There's a whole load of stuff there that someone could unpick. But the reality is I can't, I'll do anything to get out of it. Honestly, I do move. I love walking.
Mm.
I told you before that I love doing yin yoga. So I thought it would be really lovely if you could put some perspective into this that means that for someone like myself who's not that bothered but knows it's important, what is there for us? If we can sort of thread that through our conversation, that would be amazing. But I mean, what's your approach to, I'm always keen to know, what's your approach to the whole gym scene and lifting weights and all the rest of it?
Well, I'm with you. Um, I will not, I have never been, or maybe by accident, or as it were, I have no motivation either to doing strength training in the gym with free weights. That just is not the appeal. But if we step back a bit from that, why is exercise important? Why is that? Which is why, I wanted to understand that question. Um, the thing why exercise is good for us or good for our health is that, of course, it goes back to the hormones. Um, uh, but even further than that, Hippocrates 2000 years ago said that if we could give every individual just the right amount of nourishment, just the right amount of exercise, not too little, not too much, then we would have found the surest way to health. So exercise undoubtedly is important, but why is that? Because the hormones respond to exercise. Knew we were going to come back to
I
the
knew, full
hormones. So,
circle.
so, 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 why was Hippocrates right? Because between you doing the exercise and how you and your health, how you feel at the end, in between working its magic, like I try to discover, through studying medicine, is the hormones respond to what you do. So, and that's why exercise is good for your health and but it's not, it's beyond, but like you say, we don't want it to be mechanical. If you don't like going to the gym and lifting weights, you're not going to find the motivation to be consistent, and it's the consistency of it, just going once and, token lifting some weights and thinking, oh my gosh, I really don't want to do that again. That's not helpful because it's going to be counterproductive because you're not enjoying it. So the key thing about exercise, you've got to enjoy it so that you're going to go back and repeat it and do it and progress with it and be excited and energized and look forward to going to do the exercise. Now, it is true that there are many the other thing that I think gets missed out in the conversation about exercise, if you understand why exercise is good for enjoyment and for your hormone health and your overall health. But secondly, there are different types of exercise. Because when we say the word exercise, actually, we often forget there are many types of fitness. There's cardiovascular fitness, which typically is, running, swimming, all those sorts of things, cycling, etc. There's muscular strength. There's muscular endurance. There's also flexibility. And there's also, balance, neuromuscular control. So if you were just to go and lift weights in the gym, great, you would have ticked muscular strength, but you wouldn't have ticked all those other components of fitness. So, but nevertheless, strength is an important element. So what's the solution around this? The solution is literally to find something that you like doing and going to be consistent doing it. If you are somebody that actually really likes that challenge of going to the gym and lifting free weights, undoubtedly that's great for strength. Of course, you're going to challenge the muscles, you're going to challenge the bone, you're going to get the hormones springing into action to support body composition and bone health. So we can't say that's, if you want to do it that way, that's absolutely fine. But if, like you and me, that's not going to work. That's not the way. We have to look at other ways of doing strength exercise. So you mentioned you like walking. I like going swimming, so we can do our cardiovascular exercise. My thing is ballet. So when I do there, I'm using flexibility. I'm definitely using balance. By the way, I am using muscular strength
Yes.
and I'm
You're
using
holding your own
muscular
body
endurance.
weight as well,
Yeah,
aren't you?
exactly. Well, and that exactly body weight. So when we come down to it, there was a recent study saying that actually body weight exercise as a form of strength training is it is something, right? So doing you mentioned yoga, planks, holding static positions, body weight stuff is actually pretty beneficial and actually very good for core control. So if you're not don't want to go to the gym, can't go to the gym or whatever, then at least doing body weight exercise. Yoga is very good. Pilates, I'm Pilates teacher, so Pilates, if especially if you can use the apparatus resistance against springs, that's one way of doing it. And also, you don't have to lift free weights. Resistance bands. Resistance bands, I
Yes.
would argue, are actually better. They give you resistance both on the way out and the way in. you see. So there are many ways of doing this, or dancing, like I mentioned. Dancing, of course, I'm going to come back to that. Dancing is great because it's definitely cardiovascular fitness. You do get out of breath, by the way. You def flexibility, balance, strength, muscle strength. I'm loading the skeleton. I'm changing direction because actually running all in one direction,
Yes.
it's pretty good for bones, but actually bones prefer the challenge, or more to the point, hormones like the challenge, the change. So you see what I mean? There are so many different approaches, but the key thing in all of this is number one, don't focus just on one thing. Even if you are going
Yes.
to the gym and lifting free weights and you love it, brilliant, absolutely continue, but don't neglect the other areas of fitness or vice versa. Like us, if we're not a gym person,
Yeah.
let's carry on with the other things and let's look for other ways of doing that. Because, and also the enjoyment thing, that's really the key thing. And some people, you mentioned you don't particularly like going to group classes. Some people do. So you see it again, it's so individual. And that's what also I agree with you, gets me slightly irritated when I see all these, especially on social media. Oh, you see the woman lifting heavy weights in the gym. This is the only way to do it. You have to do this. And if you don't, you're kind of like made to feel really bad that you're some sort of
Yes.
failing or something. So
Yes.
that's the wrong message. If you like doing that and you can do it, brilliant. I'm not criticizing that, but there are many different approaches to this, and it's the one that works for you. And some people, like you, prefer doing it by yourself. I prefer, I mean, I like doing a mixture. When I'm swimming, I just like the calmness. I don't have to talk to anyone. Well, you can't anyway when you're swimming, but I like that peace of quiet, that tranquility. It's
Yes.
just me in the water and that's it. I quite like that. But equally, when I go to my ballet class, actually part of it is, these are my friends that I've been doing this class with for 30 years odd. And so it's a little bit of a social connection as well. So again, I think it's finding out what works for you and ideally mixing it up a little bit so that you don't get bored with one thing. That's the other thing. Even
Yeah.
if you do really, really like going and lifting weights in the gym, that could become a little bit tedious. And so mixing it up and changing it around, that's really the key thing. And it goes back to the physiology of it because hormones respond to change. If they don't like, they get bored as well.
Yeah,
Right?
that's a great full circle. So I've written those four things down. So enjoy it, the type, so cardio, muscular,
Yeah.
endurance, flexibility, you know, and not forgetting that body weight is strength training, but
Yeah.
mix it up to achieve all four.
Yes.
I love that. So that will definitely put those as a takeaway. So I don't want to make any assumptions when you say hormones. Could you sort of catalogue or roll call the hormones that you're talking about when we think about exercise, Nikki?
Sure. So, hormones, first of all, what is a hormone? It's an internal chemical messenger, gets transported in the bloodstream. But what does a hormone actually do? The clue comes from the derivation of the word hormone from ancient Greek, meaning setting in motion. That perfectly describes what a hormone does. Whizzes around in the bloodstream, which is great, by the way, can go to every cell in the body. When it arrives at the cell, it goes into the cell nucleus, and it directs the expression of DNA in its production of specific proteins. I mean, just that is amazing if you think about it. DNA blueprint for life, but how does it come to life, right? And that is directed and driven by the hormones. So, for example, say you go to your ballet class, which I'm going to do this evening. Say I
Yeah.
go to my ballet class, right? I'm going to give my body a challenge. It's like, yes, I've got to hold this leg here for so many counts, and yes, I've got to jump this way and whatever. And so that will provide a stimulus to the production of my hormones. And then when I'm asleep, these hormones will drive the expression of DNA to make more muscle proteins, etc. And so that's how, if I have the exercise, give it the stimulus, by the way, fuel your hormones, obviously, eat sufficiently, get some sleep in, then it's the hormones that drive those adaptations and make you ultimately fitter, stronger, etc. Which hormones in particular am I talking about? I'm talking particularly about what's called the anabolic hormones. Anabolic means body building, literally. And so these are the hormones that build muscle, build bone, and these are hormones such as growth hormone. By the way, it's not just growth hormone isn't just about children growing. Adults, we produce some growth hormone as well. Okay. To maintain body composition, muscle strength, etc. And the two main stimuli for growth hormone release are exercise, so challenge your body, challenge the
Mhm.
hormones, and sleep. So you see, so it's coming nicely back to Hippocrates, isn't it? That you do your exercise, you do your fueling, your eating during the day. When you go to sleep, then the hormones will drive, especially the anabolic ones, will drive those adaptations to what you've done. So growth hormone for men and women, testosterone is another one, anabolic hormone. Obviously, higher levels in men than women, we know, and that's why men are more muscular, as simple as that. But still, nevertheless, we get some response. And for women, also another anabolic hormone is actually estradiol. So, this is why things become a little bit more challenging in general for men and women as we get older, because as we get older, men and women, the growth hormone is declining. So we have to put in a bit more of an effort. Hence, we're talking about strength training, whatever that form that might take. And for women, of course, we're talking menopause, perimenopause, when the ovarian hormones are dropping, including the estradiol. So women kind of have a double whammy of the growth hormone and the other anabolic hormone estradiol and indeed testosterone going lower. So that's why you should do some form of strength training throughout your life, but it becomes particularly more important the proportion of the exercise you're doing. We've mentioned all the different types of exercise, but when we get older, it's all about proportions, putting
Mm.
more emphasis on the strength training, whatever form that might take, you see, without neglecting the others. So it's just keeping the balance, and I talk about balance of our behaviors. I don't like that expression, balancing the hormones, because the hormones have had millions of years of evolution. They know quite well how to balance themselves. Thank you very much. They simply respond to what you're doing. So don't blame the hormones, right? The hormones will be doing their thing and they will respond to what the balance of your behaviors in terms of your exercise, nutrition, and your sleep, just like Hippocrates said. But this is great. This is a really positive message. This really empowers all of us, I hope, to realize that we have agency, we have control to a certain extent over our health through our choices of behaviors.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's amazing. I mean, one of the questions I get most often, Nikki, it'd be interesting to get your perspective, is that people say, "Yeah, but I just take some collagen supplements, and up my collagen." I mean, do you have an answer rooted in science behind whether that's okay, not okay? Will that help? Won't it help? What are your thoughts about the whole collagen supplementation thing when people think about muscle?
Well, I think in general terms, yeah, we all look for a quick fix. Wouldn't it be lovely? Wouldn't it be lovely if there were some elixir? You just take some collagen and lo and behold, da-da. So
But that's what social media sells us, though, isn't it,
yeah, I
Nikki?
know, but precisely selling is the point. But you
Yeah.
have to have the fundamentals in place. You have to remember Hippocrates first. You have to get that, and then maybe there's a place for some extra little bits. That's really the approach to nutrition in general. Don't go straight for the exotic, if I can put it like that, supplement. Just get the fundamentals right. That's really important. And then maybe some supplements. In my opinion, the only supplement that everybody should be taking worldwide, but especially in the UK, is vitamin D. Because vitamin D, even if you eat loads of foods which are rich in vitamin D, like oily fish, dairy produce, you can't produce enough because the main source of vitamin D is from the action of sunlight on your skin. And we were just discussing, yes, there's not a lot of
There's
sunlight.
not an abundance of
There's not
that.
a lot of that. So even if you walk around naked all winter in the UK, not only will you get very strange looks
I
and
think
get
you'll be
very cold,
incarcerated, probably.
yeah, well, apart from that, you still won't make vitamin D. So vitamin D, personally, I take it all year round. I don't
Yeah.
pack it if I do go on a sunny holiday. So vitamin D is the key supplement. There are some other optional extras if you wish. If you're a vegetarian, you must take vitamin B12, otherwise you will be deficient. Full stop, that's it. What evidence? I mean, creatine, if anything, is the one that has more evidence than collagen in terms of muscle strength, muscle preservation, if we can put it like that. So that's one that's got more scientific evidence. Collagen, I mean, it really depends what things you're reading or what social media posts are claiming things like this. Collagen. I mean, the thing is, what is collagen? Collagen is a protein, it's a type of protein, okay, for connective tissue. But any protein that you eat will be broken down to its constituents, amino acids, and then absorbed. So I rather than, oh, should it be marine collagen, whatever, do you know what? Rather than taking some powder in a water that doesn't taste very nice, I would much prefer to have, a slice of smoked salmon. Thank you very much.
A whole food,
A
right?
whole food,
Where
and
you break down. That's
you're
exactly
going to
what I
break
just
it
said
down.
on that webinar. I said, vegetarian or whatever, find that whole food protein that your body's going to utilize, but when it's broken it down, and you're not going to end up just peeing it out, you
No.
know, and possibly damaging your kidneys with too much protein. But your body's going to take what it needs, isn't it?
Well, and the other thing is, it's all about going back to that thing about enjoyment.
Mm.
I can take this glass of collagen supplement, whatever thing. I've done it. I've tried it. So I thought, well, I should. I
Yeah,
always
yeah,
feel
of
I
course.
should. It's like, oh, really, it tastes disgusting. Anyway, I have that or option. Or here's a lovely bit of smoked salmon. I love smoked salmon.
I can
Well, now,
tell.
what do you prefer? It's like I'm going for that for the
Yeah,
enjoyment.
and the endorphins probably and all those
Yeah,
other
exactly. All
benefits
those other things.
from. Can I just say one little thing which
Yes.
irritates me immensely about creatine? I have done a literature review on creatine,
Mm,
and do you know, it drives me insane the amount of people going, "Oh, I'm just going to try the whole creatine thing." Actually, for people like myself who are on, I take cimetidine because I have histamine intolerance.
right.
It's actually contraindicated to take
Oh,
creatine.
no, absolutely. We
And
should be.
also with ibuprofen and aspirin, you need
Mm,
to be really careful. But when I see these influencers, I hate that word, but influencers, um, they've not done their research, they've not fact checked it, they have very few people. And every time I see that, I put that reference on people's
yep.
posts. And people are
Mm,
going, "Oh my God, I didn't realize I take aspirin every day, or I take an anti-sickness pill or kidney treatment."
yeah.
I
You
think
have
we're
to
at
be
that
very,
mercy.
very careful. I call these people influencers because, but this is in general what the problem is. These generic comments, like
Yeah,
the only way to do strength training is to go and lift weights, free weights in the gym. Creatine is an absolute must for everybody or whatever it is, the latest thing. I can't keep up with all the latest trends. And, for some people, it's fair enough. That might be helpful. Okay. But you're right. We have to be really, really careful with things that aren't regulated medications, nor are they foods. So they fall between two stools in terms of their regulation, in terms of the quality and all this sort of thing. And also, like you say, the medicines will always have contraindications. Don't
mm,
take this if X, Y, and Z. And where we know that some herbal remedies, for example, for menopause, we know actually can potentially be dangerous because they interact with other prescription medications. So I'm totally with you there. Please be discerning. Number one, does it sound too good to be true? Just use your
yeah,
common sense. If it says if you take this, whatever it is, latest supplement, something, you will look 21 again. It's like just be sensible, and you're 51. It's just like hold on a minute. Fact, just common sense check. Is this reason? Does this sound likely? And also, so if it's overhyped, and also if it's very, very scant on detail, like what's it actually got in it? Because when I did my collagen experiment, I was like looking and what's it got in it? It doesn't,
yeah,
I wanted to know the exact content, the exact thing, the source, all this sort of thing. Unless you can really know that, and unless it's got a warning, don't take this if X, Y, or Z, then that should raise some alarm bells that actually maybe this is just literally for marketing and putting money
exactly.
in other people's pockets. So I said, so just be, I think the message is just be discerning about your choices because I do have a lot of people, men and women, by the way, who come to me and I sort of ask casually, are you taking any supplements, hoping they're going to say vitamin D and leave it at that. And then they give me this massive long list. It's like, oh my goodness. Number one, how much did that cost you? And number two, how the heck do you remember to take this there and that there? It's like, and they say, yeah, it drives me mad having this schedule. It's like, well, yeah, exactly. So I think common sense has to prevail.
Yeah, I agree with you, and we've had previous people like Karen Newby who is great in her advice around
Mm,
nutrition and things like that, which is absolutely brilliant. I mean, I suppose let's talk about something else then, because
mm,
one of the most common symptoms that women present with, particularly during perimenopause, is fatigue and joint pain.
yep.
And I know myself, I really struggle, Nikki. Any tips you've got for this? But I really struggle with the DOMS, the whole DOMS
Yep.
thing, and it can put me out of action for days. Like I
Hmm.
get rising neck pain. Like if I literally do anything like this, like I'll
Hmm.
get rising neck pain, and that's me out of action, probably a headache and
Oh
stuff.
gosh.
How can we adapt our movement so that we do stay moving and addressing those four types that you talked about? What adaptations in your experience in your career do you think would be helpful for people during this time? Do you have any thoughts on that? So
Yes,
either
well,
recovery, flexibility, or mobility, any of those things.
yeah, well, one of the symptoms of perimenopause, menopause. Um, Unfortunately, the list is quite long. I describe it as a Pandora's box. One of those symptoms is, as you say, DOMS, aches and pains, not necessarily related to injury, but and this is because of the declining estrogen, or up and down estrogen, and then it's declining because that's the an anabolic hormone. So what are you going to do? So by the way, vitamin D is really important for bone health, for muscle recovery, especially from eccentric loading, and
Mm.
for immunity and for general well-being. So if you're not already taking vitamin D, I think we've hopefully got the message there. Go and get yourself some vitamin D. And I would actually recommend taking it all year round, unless you're going on a sunny holiday, because even if it is sunny in the summer in the UK, unless you're literally like sunbathing,
Yes.
just wearing a bikini, actually you're usually covered up, So if you're cycling, got a cycle helmet on and on whatever, you see what I mean? So vitamin D definitely is a must, a go-to. Um, Make sure that you are eating sufficient protein, because protein builds muscle. That will help with the muscles, you being more resistant and resilient to that. Um, Another tip I would suggest is magnesium spray can really help. Um, and any supplement that you can take in a spray form and don't have to take as a tablet is kinder on the gut.
Mm.
Um, so I think there is vitamin D spray, by the way, although I have to say I do take a tablet for that because it's just kind of more convenient to transport around. But for the magnesium, actually, I have a spray of magnesium by my bedside table, and I spray my calf muscles every evening because I tend to get cramps and things like this, especially with ballet, my calf muscles, etc. So I would really recommend those
Yeah, that's
things.
really. I do know that there is a brand, and it sort of tingles when you put it on. I think it's called Better You, and it tingles when you put
Oh
it
yeah,
on.
yeah, that's the one I've got. That's
Yeah,
exactly
so
the one I got.
Better You, and they do quite nice because they can either put it in an oil or it is a spray, but it just is a tingle. So you just be careful where, and I think you've suggested exactly the right place. Not probably anywhere here, but maybe on those bigger muscle
Oh, the
groups.
the bigger muscle groups, legs, definitely, calf muscles for sure. So
Yeah,
so those things, and also, just if you've done those things, and you have done your strength training, whatever that looks like for you, again, that's going to give the muscles that endurance, that resilience combined with these other things.
yeah. Okay, so that's really helpful, and I suppose that leads me on to the next question. Then, you know, I think there is some statistics. I can't recall them right now, but the reality is once girls, women start menstruating, the number of people that stop exercising is like
Mm,
tragic. And so I definitely was that person that the minute my
mm,
boobs got bigger, I stopped any form of exercise. I became very, very self-conscious. If we have been that sort of person that has done exercise throughout our lives, but then we're starting to struggle a little bit more. When you have worked with dancers, athletes, and active individuals, you know, I think often the mindset is, well, I just keep doing what I always did because that's always
yeah, yeah.
worked.
Yes, well, exactly. Especially, yeah, the masters athletes, they sort of come to me and, they're 49 and saying, I don't understand. I'm training exactly. I haven't changed anything since I was 21. And yet I'm not getting the results. And yet I am getting DOMS. And yet, my body composition is changing and I feel really fatigued and I can't perform. It's like, yeah, it's because your hormones are, well, yes, because your hormones have changed. So you have to respect that. You can't train like a 21-year-old anymore and expect to have the same results. It's just not going to happen. So it's a case of, again, it's the proportion of the things you're doing. So actually, the most important thing is more recovery you need as you become a masters
Right.
athlete, an older person. So because remember, the adaptations occur when you're resting. So
Yes.
you haven't got the hormone levels are a bit lower. So you need to give them more of an opportunity, give them a bit more time to take. So first of all, I say, right, let's look at this training schedule. And rather than having one rest day a week, we need at least two rest days per week. In the sense, maybe you're just going to do a gentle walk to the shops or some gentle stretching, but not extra training as such,
No.
on a rest day. So more rest for sure, and definitely more focus on the quality of the exercise. Cyclists are typical. By the way, I can say this because I've got a whole household of cyclists. My husband, a 4-hour cycle ride, anything shorter is seen as like that's not a proper ride or something, but actually just doing a shorter so short quality exercise rather than going for super long. It's the quality of exercise, which might mean a little bit more intensity. So doing a shorter ride, but with some sort of intervals in some, when you do push it a bit,
Yeah.
that's the type of training you do, more rest and recovery, and then the nutrition side of things. So making sure you're increasing your protein intake, but you're not skimping crazily on too much on carbohydrates. You have to fuel for the work required, as we say. So if you are going to do a really quality exercise session, then the main food source is from complex carbohydrates. So if you're really serious about this, you're going to have more rest. I know that sounds, because you need it. You're going to do really quality training to stimulate those slightly lower levels of anabolic hormones, and you're going to fuel appropriately, generally with more protein, but then not skimping too much. None of this fasted training and all this, which drives me around the bend. Please do fuel so you can get the most out of your body and you'll get the appropriate hormone responses, the ones that are building muscles and bones, not the ones that are breaking it down. If you go and try and do a quality, some exercise in a fasted state, your cortisol will already be high, by the way. That's why we call it breakfast, by the way, because it breaks your
Breaks
fast.
the
You're already on a fast
fast.
overnight, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, so you need to have some fuel in the tank so you can go and perform quality exercise, and that will stimulate the production of the bodybuilding, the anabolic hormones. Conversely, if you go and train and you're fasted or haven't got enough energy in the system, cortisol is high. Cortisol is a catabolic hormone, it breaks stuff down, you see. So this is what I mean. Don't blame the hormones being out of balance. And with all due respect, it's what you've done, out of balance. That is the hormones simply respond. The hormones simply do what they're programmed to do according to what you put into the system. So you need to put in really good quality inputs, and then
Yeah.
you'll get really good quality output.
And that's so true. During lockdown, I'll tell you a small story. During
Oh
lockdown,
yeah.
obviously when the world and their brother were taking
Mm.
walks and doing stuff outside, I was consuming lots of crisps and mostly alcohol, I think, and not really moving very
Along
much.
with
Then,
lots of others,
yeah,
yeah.
along with lots of others, I know I'm not on my own, even if they don't say. And I thought, right, I'm going to kick myself into touch. And I started doing HIIT workouts, which I
Oh yeah.
hated. And I was like, well, this doesn't seem to be working. And then I did 2 HIIT workouts a day, and that really wasn't working. And I was actually putting weight on.
Yes,
And I tell people all the time now that, cortisol, if you're in a cortisol state, your body feels it's in survival mode. So you're
exactly.
just going to hold on to everything. But
Yep.
in the end, like for my birthday, I love walking, as I said to you before, Nikki. So I walk every October in my birthday
Mhm.
month for a charity.
Wow.
All the weight came off
There you go.
because I
Exactly.
walked at a pace, 75% of my maximum heart
Yep.
rate. I'm walking up hills. I'm keeping my mouth
Yes.
closed. So I love the work that Dr. Louise Oliver does, talks about this sort
Hmm.
of like breathing properly, breathing with our mouth
Yep.
closed. That has made a real difference for me. So
Hmm.
of course, then when we're sleeping, if we're not mouth breathing when we're sleeping, we're also not in cortisol mode then. So it's that
Yep.
whole huffing and puffing. But I agree with you, which leads me on to one other question then, which is again, I hear lots of people around me going, okay, so make sure you've had your protein like within half an hour of doing your exercise. And I'm like, I'm already switching off. I mean, is there any truth behind all of that? Protein before, is it carbs before, protein after, if we're building muscle? I mean, is it, tell me what it's really all about.
So before, it's definitely have some carbs. I mean, if you do have your breakfast, and then you go for some exercise. If I go swimming, for example, I have my breakfast, and then, about an hour or something later, I'll go swimming. So that's fine. I've got some energy in the tank ready to go. On the other hand, if I had breakfast and I wasn't going to go swimming until midday, then probably I should have a banana before I go. You see what I mean? So
Yeah,
number
there's
one,
something
exercise,
available.
being, cognizant that I've had some carbohydrate relatively close. Okay. And then afterwards, yes, it is recommended to refuel within 20, 30 minutes of stopping with complex carbs and protein, the ratio 3 to 1. And I think this is where the message has gone wrong because most people say, oh yeah, yeah, I refuel with a protein shake. And so it's not just protein. It's
So what is
carbs
the
and
ratio carbs to protein?
so more carbs, 3 to 1. And you can buy, I mean, basically you can make your own. So you can do a banana milkshake, for example, right?
Yes.
Because that banana is complex carbs
Yeah.
and milk is protein. So that would be, you can do your own, or you can buy sports recovery drinks. And if you look at the label,
Yeah.
right? SIS, Science in Sport, as the
Yeah.
name suggests, they have done the science, and the ratio is 3 to 1, carbs to protein. So now it depends. So, for example, say you come back from your ride. I'm thinking of my husband, he comes back from his ride, say it's 11 o'clock, so it's not yet time for lunch. So
No.
then he will have a banana milkshake to tide him over and then he'll go on and have his lunch later. If you're in the lucky situation, you roll in through the door and then you can eat your next meal, pretty sharpish within 20, 30 minutes. That's okay. So the reason you have to refuel is because during that time, you want to replenish your glycogen stores and you want to keep the cortisol calm. Like you said, we're talking about cortisol. So,
Yeah.
yes, the reason you exercise, you do want to put a bit of stress on the body. So, the cortisol, of course, will go up a little bit, but you want it then to calm down and you want to encourage those anabolic hormones. And the anabolic hormones need feeding, thank you, because they're going to tell the DNA to make protein. To make protein and all, you need energy to make that process work. So
Yeah.
that's why you have to refuel. They recommend within that time frame. But again, it's got so much lost in translation that it's, just so protein focused.
Yeah. To the detriment is I almost liken it a bit to, do we always only hear about estrogen and do we
Yes,
always only
exactly,
hear
exactly.
about,
Progesterone, yeah,
protein? It's like,
yeah.
what about all the other players in this play,
Well,
by
that's
the
true.
way?
Exactly, exactly. And they all have a part to play
Yeah.
in different proportions at different times. Exactly
As
like the
any
menstrual
good
cycle.
play, as any good
Yes,
play, we don't have
ex
just one solo person. So,
exactly.
and that's the point, isn't it? I think I love the analogy that our hormones are like an orchestra,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and symphonies are created when, various parts of the orchestra all come together. Some bits take prominence, some bit a little bit more low key, but every part plays an integral piece in
Yeah.
that orchestra.
And if one is out of tune, and by the way, the reason I came up with this analogy is because the pituitary gland, which is the boss here in the brain, is often described as the conductor of the endocrine orchestra. So there it is conducting everything there. And when I wrote my book, Hormones, Health and Human Potential, I wanted to make sure that it was a book that was, you didn't have to have a medical degree to understand it, number one, but nevertheless, I wanted to write it in a way that was, evidence-based, got references and but relatable in a story.
Yeah.
And so I got my mother-in-law to proofread it. She's not at all scientific in
Oh,
any way, shape, or
amazing.
form, but she is the writer. And she got it. She said, "Oh, I get your thing about the orchestra of the hormones. So, like, if one instrument is out of tune, it could throw all the rest." It's like, wow, my work is done.
Oh,
You see?
well done. Well, I bet she was mightily impressed with you. And that's a good litmus test, isn't it? Because it can be so
Yes,
confusing, this
yes,
whole topic, but equally it can be so simplistic as well.
yes,
If
yes.
if if we just take our time with it, and actually the brain and the body working together, it's not one independent of the other. It's
No.
it's so brilliantly intertwined. And so tell us a little bit about your books then. So you've got the one behind you, Hormones, Health and Human Potential, and your second one, which you sort of collaborated with a number of people on, didn't you?
Yes. Yes, so the first one, Hormones, Health and Human Potential. Um, and by the way, that's a line drawing from me doing a jump on a beach in Australia many years ago because I wanted that
Amazing.
because that's to sort of demonstrate the energy that your hormones can give you if you treat them nicely and if you listen to them and all the rest of it. So that takes you through the hormone orchestra and also takes you through the life. I used Shakespeare, the seven stages of man and woman, by the way. And
Mhm.
we talk about hormones in Act One. It's all acts and scenes, of course, because of my dance background. So Act
Yeah,
One is sort of
lovely.
literally setting the scene and explaining to you about hormones and their role in bones, etc., like this. And then we have Act Two, which is going through how the hormones change through the various stages of the life, starting off with the child going right through to old age. So that's the first one. And then the second book, Myths of Menopause, I'm the editor. I did write some of that myself, but yes, I wanted to tap into other people's views, expert views in various fields and topics. And this, as the title suggests, Myths of Menopause. It's going in there to, it's not a dry textbook. It's going in to bust those most frequent, persistent, and annoying myths. And on the front cover of that, you will see Athena. Athena is the goddess of wisdom. And by the way, it was Athena who, of course, a female goddess, point out, who guided Odysseus, a man, through his Odyssey. So Athena is there to guide you through your female hormone Odyssey, you see, and
What a
help you
lovely,
navigate.
that's a really great link. I can see the Greekness and the trilogies
Oh,
coming throughout everything you do. Do you have a favorite ballet, by the way?
oh, do I have a favorite ballet? Well, for different reasons. I mean, I loved Don Quixote, because
Okay.
it's just got the energy and the Spanish feel, and that's great. But if you want a sort of heartstrings emotional story, I mean, Romeo and Juliet, of course, or the classics, One Lake. Uh, so have I got a favorite ballet? Well, no, I want to watch all of them. you know, but the thing is that another analogy, if you will, for example, Swan Lake. It's a ballet with various scenes and acts, and it's got a story to it. And so this is what kind of gets me annoyed sometimes. People say, well, let's just go straight for the last act. Let's just talk about menopause now, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, hold on a minute. How can you make sense of the last if you just didn't know anything about ballet and you sat in front of the last scene of Swan Lake? You wouldn't have any idea of what's gone before and the context. And so this is why this idea of the story of the hormones, and like you said, the myths and the stories, I think those are really, well, that's how I think about hormones. Anyway, that helps me
Well,
understand it,
I
understand
agree.
it.
I agree, actually. I was really lucky to be part of a conversation about research into women's and the life course at Exeter
Yes,
University. And I got very excited, Nicky, when they started saying we're going to follow people right from the beginning to
yes,
the end. And as a postmenopausal person myself, I was sat there, I was going, this is so exciting. But then suddenly, maybe thinking, because people don't understand that, and we've sort of over narrated
yes.
the difficulties of menopause, which, by the way, I don't believe is true. I believe it's a door opening moment as much as
Yeah,
anything else,
absolutely.
with the
Well,
right
as in
support.
Japanese, the
Absolutely.
second spring and all that. Yes,
Absolutely. But then there was this moment where I was just like heartbroken almost that
I know.
we're not going to follow people, because if we follow people and their hormones,
Yes.
the context of the environments in which they find themselves, we would see so many differences and changes, so many adaptations, so many things popping up, that I think that would inform us even more about what it is to be female, what it is to have this life course,
Mhm.
and our relationship with our hormones, because it really is that. And so I think there's so much more that we need to be doing, which leads me nicely just into, as we sort of crescendo towards our end, which
Uh-huh.
is the In Tune program. So tell us a little bit about that, because that's where I first met you, and I was in one of your groups, as we sort of were talking about the
Mhm.
In Tune program. Tell people who don't know what it is, and what they can look forward to.
So I'm an honorary clinical lecturer at UCL, and I've got some amazing colleagues, Professor Joyce Harper, Dr. Sheba Tarek, and we kind of got together and said, all this information swirling around, misinformation. We talked about social media, and all the talk about menopause and women feeling bewildered and feeling very negative and not sure where to turn and all this sort of thing. Wouldn't it be lovely if we could provide women with really reliable information, number one, and also a support network. And so hence this is in tune with your hormones. That's what we're working towards, and getting everyone's views, because it's all very well, us three sitting here and saying, okay, this is what women need to know, but actually we need to find out, and hence all the various discussions, focus groups, and getting input. And so the next stage of that, so that's ultimately what we're aiming for, to be able to deliver this support program. with information, support, etc. But the first stage of, and the next stage is to make sure that it is truly evidence-based. So we're at the moment going to write a grant proposal because there are loads of courses out there, but actually, what evidence is then that what do these courses actually help, or what happens? We don't know. So the next stage for the Intune is to do a proper funded research to say, right, when we delivered this was the feedback, and this was well, we hope the positive outcome or
Yeah.
not. And then we can build on it and adapt it and change it. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. But I just want to say a quick thing about that life course approach. I've also just written a chapter for a book with an American colleague, actually.
Mm.
And we talk precisely about this, about, it seems crazy that suddenly we arrive at menopause and then it's like, we're like, what's going on? What's happening? And we don't understand why people are feeling differently. But it all goes back to, what's happened, what's gone before, like the ballet, what's happened before.
100%.
And also, I think we want to change this attitude with the, young girls that having periods is dreadful, negative, awful, blah, blah, blah. We should be celebrating and saying these hormones are amazing. Yes, they can be challenging at times of change, like in puberty. Yeah,
Mm.
remember that. And also perimenopause, by the way, the mirror image of puberty when the hormones are one thing they're sort of going up, and the other thing they're sort of winding down. So these are two key times. But how can we possibly expect women to navigate perimenopause if from a very young age they've been fed this narrative that it's all so negative, negative. So that's my other little project,
Oh, I love
as it
it.
were,
That's really, well,
to
I'd love
like
to speak to
going
you more about that. That's amazing.
to raise that awareness and understanding and appreciation and admiration indeed
Yeah,
for
and
our
I
hormones.
mean, part of that was born out of my own lived experience in that if knowing
Yes.
what I know now, I had my genetics done actually, and
Oh
I
yeah.
can see I have histamine intolerance. I have
All right.
a dicky diamine oxidase
Whoa.
gene. So, of course, my morning sickness was terrible in
Yeah. Yeah.
pregnancy. I would constantly have postnasal drip in my after my pregnancy,
Oh
hence why
gosh.
I'm on acid reflux medication. And so
Ah.
I had a protracted perimenopause. I was perimenopause for 16 years, Nikki,
Oh
and
gosh. Wow. You poor
25
thing.
symptoms for a decade. So, I agree with you. Now I have a 19-year-old daughter who also, guess what, in her
Ah.
genetics, shown the same thing.
Really? Okay.
So I really feel very passionately we should, a bit like, I'd like to almost take our metaphor of ballet or an orchestra, if that's our hormones. I would like to say, imagine you were at a conference centre where there were side by side 20 ballets taking place,
Wow.
different systems, different things, but we can
Yes.
gently hear that they're going on. We're focused on this one ballet, but we're aware that there are 19
Yes.
other
Exactly.
ballets around
Exactly.
us. And so I'm doing my own research linking histamine
Oh.
to our hormones. And actually, there is a very strong correlation. I'll tease this up for you. There's a very strong correlation between DOMS, histamine, and perimenopause. When for people like myself, when I break down muscle, that creates an inflammatory response.
Right. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Inflammation.
And then if I've got a dicky diamine oxidase gene, which can't process, and my HNMT is not so good either, then my body is swimming in
Mm.
histamine, have a coffee or two. Now my
Whoa.
cortisol's up. It's
Yikes.
it's like so I think you're right. I think it's almost like or like if you want to think about the universe, there's one planet, but there are many other planets that also exist in this
Interactions.
universe. So it's those attractions and interactions that I think are fascinating. So we sound like we've got a similar
Mm.
interest. But as always, time doesn't
Yes.
wait for hormones, Nikki.
No.
So we've sort of run out a little bit. But if I were to ask you to summarize, because you're so interesting to talk to, so thank you for giving us your wisdom. Thanks for clarifying some things for us. What I heard there in our conversation was, remember, movement isn't about fitness. Okay, it's about strength, longevity. I think there's a massive confidence piece as well for us that we
Yeah.
can reclaim in our movement. But I would like to encourage people to share this conversation with others. But when you think about your field of expertise, when you think about exercise and movement, longevity. What's your hope for people, say in the next 5 years? If we were to come back, what would you have hoped would have happened?
Well, that they would have listened to this conversation, and that they would be, not feeling sort of, how to say, almost bullied or forced into doing some exercise that they've been told is good for them and they should do it, because that just takes all the joy out of your life. And so hopefully people in the future are realizing that it's this balanced approach, and it's also the enjoyment element, because that will make you happy above all others. And by the way, that will also make your hormones happy. And of course, then, that will improve your healthy longevity. I don't know about you, but I don't want to live longer just for the sake of a certain number. I
No.
want to be healthy. So I think healthy longevity has to include absolutely the element of enjoyment, happiness, satisfaction, which we can all achieve. But it's of course it's going to be different for different people. So we're not all clones. It's going to be slightly different approach. But bearing in mind these are the fundamental tools at your disposal, going back to Hippocrates, and then you mold it for what you like doing, what's possible, practical for you as well. And that's going to lead you to hopefully your full potential.
I love that. So I wrote down enjoyment, balanced, and satisfying equals healthy.
Yay, we have it.
Done. So I mean, I had always planned to go for a walk after speaking to you today. So now I've just got even more of a pep in my step. So thank you for giving me that sort of insight. Tell people how they can be more in touch with you, know more about your work with you directly, Nikki. I mean, we'll put stuff in the show notes, but where can people find you if they want to know more about your amazing work that you do?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so I have a website, Nicky Keay Fitness, and on there you'll see I do offer individual health advisory appointments, as I call them, to discuss all aspects of hormones for men and women, any ages. Also, there's information there if you want me to come and give a talk to your sports club, your organization. I also do that. And also on my website, there are links to my two books that we mentioned, which are available on Amazon. So might want to go straight to
Yeah,
Amazon
we'll just definitely put
just
those
get
we'll
it
put
there.
those
Yeah.
links in the show notes for you. And you're on social media as well, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I don't post that often, as you can imagine, but nevertheless, I am there. When I do post, I try and make it, something hopefully that's useful, at Dr. Nicky Keay.
Yeah, and you're on LinkedIn as well.
And
So
LinkedIn as well,
yeah,
indeed. Yeah.
so we'll put all of those up.
Brilliant.
Basically, you'll find her everywhere because why wouldn't you? So yeah, so thank you so much for your time today, Nikki. It's been really great to talk to you. I'd love to have another conversation come back. But it's actually been quite refreshing to find someone who has the same sort of ideology.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't like going to the gym. Hooray,
Yeah,
hooray.
that's the gift I never knew I was going to get. Because
Woo.
honestly, I'm like a magnet for people who are runners, weightlifters. It's like, if you don't like dogs, dogs always come to you, don't
Oh
they?
God,
I,
yes,
I
that's
just
me as
attract,
well. That's me as well.
but
And
thank you so
cats as
much for your
well.
time.
Oh,
Exactly. But let's come back again and we'll maybe have another
yeah,
conversation. But,
absolutely.
but for now, Dr. Nicky Keay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Amantha.